Hello, and thank you for tuning in to this video. Today we're talking about beyond Route 66 for travels across America. So in this video, I want to answer a few key questions. First off, what is the point of an American road trip? Particularly, why are they so well written about? Travel logs have become a very key staple in a lot of libraries and booksellers around the country. Particularly, what about the American road is so enticing to write about? And what can be learned about the United States through road trips, and how have these trips changed over time? The first is a kind of looking at a value of road trips. They essentially really have no point. How many times can you say to someone, "Yeah, I've traveled throughout all the US," and then they kind of stare blankly at you? Road trips seemingly have no real point to them. It takes a certain type of person that wants to travel that much on the road to avoid highways and byways and go to the small towns and places that have not seen a lot of through traffic in a very long time. Particularly, what about the United States can we learn through these road trips? The car has been a very new but particularly poignant addition to American culture and American itinerary, particularly amongst travel. The Lincoln Highway, first crossed in 1913, was the first route to cross all the way through from coast to coast. And in that just over 100 years, travel on these roads has been unique in the way that the American continent is vast and seemingly untapped in the same way that someone, an adventurer or pioneer like Lewis and Clark, imagined the world to be out there. Particularly, how have these trips changed over time? What changes have they shown? The first is a look at the famous, very famous On the Road by Jack Kerouac. Uh, I adore this novel. Hopefully, in the future, I'll make a video about Kerouac himself. But this is a series of 4 trips that he took with uh, Neil Cassidy, with the character of Kerouac being called Sal Paradiso and Neil Cassidy being called Dean Moriarty. In this text, he takes 4 stream of conscious style in his writing, trips across the US, and writes a lot about the kind of lifestyle and attitude at this time. Kerouac later said that On the Road is kind of like a search for God along the American highways. And it's true to form. There's parties in the Colorado hills around Denver. There's crazy insights and driving fast, and there's everything you could want out of a novel. It's exciting, it's thrilling, it's deeply sad in many ways, as Kerouac, who stumbles through parties, social stations. In fact, he really can never truly find himself out there on the road. It's a country that's changing. There's a part when he goes through DC and Eisenhower is being inaugurated. Just 30 or 40 years before this, aimless road travel, like the kind that Sal Paradiso and Dean Moriarty, the principal characters of the text, would not be possible. I think it's a great starting place for road travels. It's wild, it's wacky, it's got great stories, and it's key in the insight of an America that's coming out of the Second World War, intact, angsty, relentless, and with a real spark of life. Next, we have John Steinbeck's Travels with Charlie in Search of America. This is the last novel of the incredibly famous author Steinbeck, as he travels throughout the coastlines and northern steppe of the United States. Steinbeck is an interesting character to follow this route by, mainly because it's kind of widely known, or at least theorized, that most of the stuff in this book is speculation or made up. Steinbeck traveled a lot more in motels. He was very old at this point. He kind of just having a kick on his last book. Chiefly, I want to note that the differences in Kerouac's novels, Kerouac has a lot more life, a lot more spirit. It's a lot more sensual, a lot more devious. Steinbeck's much more clean cut with characters. He's about going to church in Vermont or going back to his hometown in California. He comments on racism in this book, and particularly during the 1960s civil rights movement. He comments on the character of the American South differently than the North and the West, different from the Black Hills, different from the streets of New Jersey, different from Maine, and very different from the arid Southwest. Chiefly, he comments about the at the time current civil rights movement and how alienating and different the American South is depending on the race of the person crossing through it. Next, I want to talk about Bill Bryson, who was a kind of a different theme. One, he is an American from the Midwest, from Iowa, and in his book, The Lost Continent, travels in small town America. He comments as someone who's went to England for a very long period of time, then returning and trying to rediscover America. Here you have a much more conversational style of text. The American road is inviting as it hides away a lot of small treasures and towns. The thing about one of the key questions is what's the point and what can we learn about America through the travels here? And the first thing is that the US has so many small places. The vastness of the continent is again played up much more in this novel than the rest of them. And also the kind of strangeness, the weirdness, the lost wackiness is once again highlighted in this book that the US is different with so many different people in so many different places, so many little towns and villages that aren't on the maps that get kind of forgotten about brought up here. And how unique the American culture and climate is again emphasized in this text. And in the final book, we're talking about a very recent one, published in 2021, James Anthony's The Slow Road to Dead Horse. Other than, besides the last book, the Bryson being an American, then English transplant, then back to England, Anthony is an Englishman who is going to the US for the first time. Specifically, this one has a part where he goes to Canada. So it's not saying the US fully, and there is definitely an intrigue in the culture shock here. The aspect that America is weird, wild, wacky, and huge is again a huge thing to be displayed in this novel. And also the exploring America's racial history is also again a theme from Steinbeck that recurs here, but in a much more modern context. It's the first book with cell phones and Instagram brought up. Anthony is not guided by maps or the sense of quaz or directionlessness that guides Kerouac. He's guided by Google Maps, who lovingly points him out onto the main directions and routes, getting through all the way from Key West in Florida to Dead Horse, all the way up in Alaska. There's less focus on the travel itself. The road isn't a character like it is in the novel of On the Road or other travel writings like the Dharma Bums or Desolation Angels that Jack Kerouac writes. It's not lonely, it's not desolate, it's not restless. It's kind of a background place. In Bryson's and Anthony's book here in Road to Dead Horse, he is comments much more on the people that they find there and the weird places that they go, from old scrap yards to wacky museums. So kind of all these books, the key thing about the United States is just the diversity of experience is constantly played up in all these, how different the places are and how wild an adventure it can be to drive across these roads. It's not just a privilege to drive these roads, but that the car itself, the automobile that you're riding in, takes on a way of life. It brings you around from place to place, not in a pure convenience sake, but a sense of adventure, a sense of wanting, a sense that there's a better life somewhere just outside the headlamps ready to be shown. Thank you so much for watching this video, and I hope you enjoy. Have a good one.